Hi, Democrats. Today is Monday, September 26th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy Monday. So a lot of stuff happened this weekend. A couple of new polls dropped. There were candidate events all over the place. And I spent the week at Lake Tenkiller getting ready for the Mike Sinard barbecue. So let's just do a recap. All right. Mike Sinard barbecue, because that's the most fun thing. This Saturday, October 1st, is the Mike Sinard barbecue. It's going to be held at the Ophi House in Park Hill, Oklahoma, on Lake Tenkiller. It's going to be all of our statewide candidates are going to be there, so you have an opportunity to meet and hear our statewide candidates, have conversations with them, and Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck, is going to be the featured entertainer. So it should be really fun. It's an outdoor event. It's a really peaceful setting. There's going to be a cookout, all kinds of fun stuff. So that is this Saturday. If you haven't bought your tickets yet, go out to okdemocrats.org/Sinard barbecue. Buy your tickets, carpool, bring your chairs and your sunscreen. It'll be a good time had by all. So I want to tell you about that. Now let's talk about a couple of polls. We all talked about the poll that showed that Superintendent Public Instruction candidate Gina Nelson is in the lead. She is in the lead by 5 points against the other guy. And then we talked about the poll of Joy Hoffmeister being in a statistical dead heat, being 1 point behind the current governor. Well, another poll came out by another organization. The first one was by Poll. The second one was by Amber Integrated, that shows that Joy Hoffmeister is 3 points behind guy with a margin of error of 3 to 4 points. So it's still another dead heat. It's another dead heat, and it proves that the first one is not some kind of fluke. The first one's not a fluke. It is what it is. And then another poll dropped this weekend that showed DA candidate in Oklahoma County, Vicky Behena, who is the Democrat, who is leading Kevin Calvi, who is the Republican. So all of that says that the Oklahoma Democratic Party and our candidates have a great shot in this election on November 8th. We have a great shot. Our candidates are ahead in the polls. That only happens, and it will only happen if we all. So you know that you educate yourself, you educate everybody around you, you make your plan to vote, and you help 10 other people make their plan to vote, because that's how we win. We don't win because the polls say we're going to win. We don't win by wishing and hoping. We actually win by going out and doing the work, going out and making sure that everybody you know is prepared to vote, going out and helping our candidates. I got several panic calls this weekend from candidates, primarily out of the Oklahoma County area, that are saying, I need volunteers. Do what you can. Can you help me get some volunteers? The weather is great now. It is not Hades hot outside anymore. It's a breeze. It's really good weather. This is a great time for you to pick a couple of candidates. And if you don't feel comfortable knocking doors, first I'm going to ask you to knock doors. But if you don't feel comfortable knocking doors, drive the candidate around. It actually helps them get 3 times as many doors knocked if they have someone driving them around. And then, we're getting to that point where candidates are putting out their signs. Some candidates just need you to put out their sign. You don't have to talk to anybody. You just load up a bunch of signs in your truck, go by the map they have and plant signs. They can use your help in all manner of ways. So I'm going to encourage you to get out and help some candidates. That's the only way that these polls are going to turn out to be the truth, is if we show up and vote. Now, I was reminded this morning of why it's so important that I say every time I have a conversation that we have to show up. Because there are forces out there who are trying to subvert our vote. There are forces out there that want you to believe that it is either so hopeful or so hopeless that it doesn't merit you going out to vote. that there's no reason for you to go out to vote because it's not going to happen or it's in the bag. Neither one of those are true. You have to show up to vote. The person who gets the most votes wins. You have to show up to vote. And so there are folks who are trying to convince you that there is no reason to vote because it's a Republican state. We're a non-voting state. There is a reason for you to vote. There are folks who are trying to convince you that there's no reason to vote because our election process is flawed. Oklahoma has one of the safest, most reliable voting systems in the United States. We do. And I say that even though the secretary of the election board is Republican, but because I believe it to be true. This isn't a partisan thing. I was a precinct worker for years. I saw the process. It is a manual process, which means that it's not hooked to the internet. I saw some junk on Twitter this weekend saying people in Oklahoma are trying to tell you that it's not connected to the internet. It's not connected to the internet. It counts the pieces of paper as they go in. It counts the pieces of paper as they go in. You can stand there when you plug yours in and it will do a count. So this isn't about, sitting there waiting for a hacker to get to it. Our system doesn't work that way. We have a very reliable system. It is a paper system. And like I said, I worked at the election board. We had to gather up all the votes that were cast and put in this box and put a special piece of tape. And then the people who work the precinct, you have a Democrat, you have a Republican, and then you have a third person. That third person could be a Democrat, or Republican, independent, or libertarian, but you have a Democrat and a Republican sitting at that table. So they gather up all the votes, they put them in a special box with a special piece of tape that the election board provides. Not a piece of tape that somebody brings from home, whatever. The election board provides this specific piece of tape that goes over the seal, and everybody signs across the seal, so that you can determine if there's been any tampering. It is a very secure process. Why am I talking about this today? Because over the weekend, the Tulsa World did an article about election integrity. The MyPillow guy, who does not deserve a name, the MyPillow guy is going all over the country leading these, I'm going to call them seminars. He's giving these talks where he's trying to work people up into believing that the election from 2020 was not right. That he's still ginning up the big lie. That somehow it was rigged. And so he's come up with this cut and paste FOIA request, which is Freedom of Information Act, for everybody to go back and write up some papers and send it to their county election boards and ask for this whole list of information. It's not about disproving the 2020 election. There were over 60 court cases about the 2020 election, over 60. This isn't about that. Now it's about a distraction. It's about trying to convince you not to vote. And it's about trying to take resources from our election board. Because if someone wants to see all of the records from 2020, which is what they're asking for, first of all, those records aren't just laying around in a file cabinet or in the back room at a golf course. Those records are secure. In every county, they have a secure place where they keep those records. So you request them, they have to go get those records and make them available. And then they have to sit there and be with you while you're looking at the records, so that the records maintain their integrity. Tulsa County alone, based on the Tulsa World, Tulsa County alone in the last 2 weeks has received over 60 requests that are alleging that the election from 2020 was rigged. Here's the thing, and just humor me on this one. Let's pretend like it was. It wasn't. Be clear, it wasn't. But let's pretend like it wasn't. Does that mean that all of the Republicans in our state who won their elections in 2020 were also subject to foul play, and that they weren't elected as well, because it was the same ballot. It was the same ballot. So if the presidential election was rigged, then so was the state house. So was the state senate. So was everything else that was on that ballot. And so are we saying that the folks who were elected in 2020 all the way down the ballot in Oklahoma, because these requests that I'm talking about are Oklahoma requests, and they are statewide, not just Tulsa. But I live in Tulsa, so I'm going to report on the Tulsa numbers. But all over the state, there are all of these requests that are asking for records from the 2020 election, the November 2020 election. Since then, we've had school board, we've had city council, we've had primary, and we've had runoff. We've had all of these different elections, but they are questioning what happened in November 2020. Do not be distracted by their crazy activity. Do not be distracted by that nonsense. Educate yourself on the people who are on the ballot right now. Educate everybody you know about the people who are on the ballot right now. And more so than I've ever said, it's important that we show up in numbers that they cannot deny. Because this is Oklahoma. Oklahoma voted for the former guy. Overwhelmingly, Oklahoma voted for the former guy. The former guy legit got all of Oklahoma's electors. And they're still fighting the election. They're still saying, Oklahoma people are still suggesting that the election was rigged. They got their way, and they're still suggesting that the election was rigged, not because they don't believe that the former guy got the most votes, not because they don't want their Republican representation in this state, but because they want to distract. Because they want you to believe that you can't trust our election system. And in Oklahoma, we have the most trustworthy election system. Well, not the most, but we're in the top 5. I would put our system against anyone else in the nation. It is a reliable source. It is a reliable system. I personally, in November of 2020, went to the election board and watched the process. Watch them as they counted, as they opened absentee ballots, as they counted. We had a team of folks who was down there for days on end, watching the process to make sure that there was no funny business, to make sure that everything went as it was supposed to go. And it did. Don't be distracted by their nonsense. We have to show up in numbers that they can't deny. We have to show up in numbers that they can't come back 2 years later and suggest that there was some funny business, because there wasn't. We have to show up. We have a governor's race on the ballot. We have a governor's race at risk. We have a current governor who is so bogged down in scandals and corruption and cronyism, he has to go. But the only way that happens is if we show up. We show up in big numbers for joy. That simple. How do we get a superintendent of public instruction who isn't obsessed with what bathroom kids go into? Is we show up in numbers that they can't deny and vote for Gina. It is this important, and all the way down the ballot. And I'm not going to list the names because you've heard me list the names, but all the way down the ballot. So educate yourself, educate other folks, and show up. Don't be distracted by the noise about the integrity of the election, about, I don't know, whatever noise, who goes to what bathroom, or the fake commercial that's out there where he says he was right. And you guys know who I'm talking about if you've seen the commercial. Focus. We just have to show up. All righty. That's all I wanted to talk about. Don't be distracted by the noise. Volunteer for a candidate or two. They need your help. They need your help desperately. Get out there, help the candidates. Make sure that you cast your vote and that everybody you know casts their vote. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back here tomorrow at 4:15. You guys have a good evening.